segon bloc, abans d'esmorzar. Serà una hora i mitja intensa i interessant. Ara baixem com del que hem explicat una mica general, l'arribada a Europa del Housing First, i ara tindrem 4 ponents i 3 que ens explicaran 3 projectes diferents a 3 països, 3 experiències europees del Housing First, i veurem les seves diferències o similituds o com funciona cada país, una mica en funció del que ha dit el primer ponent, d'adaptar-se una mica a la realitat de cada lloc i circumstàncies, pressupostos, etc. Començarem amb perdoneu la pronunciació, no sé si ho faig molt malament, amb la Saja Turunen, cap de recerca, i Rika Perala, investigadora de l'IY Foundation. Ens explicaran la reducció del sensellarisme i les adaptacions del Housing First a Finlàndia. Moltes gràcies.
Good morning, everyone. We've got many reasons to be happy today. First of all, to be here in Catalonia. Secondly, of course, Arels has put together an excellent program for next 3 days. And then finally, of course, we have to mention the weather. We left Helsinki yesterday. There was about this much snow. Our flight was delayed. So if you see us in a coffee break looking at the blue sky, this is like a summer for us. So anyway, my name is Saya. I'm the head of research in Y Foundation, and this is my colleague.
Hello everyone, I'm Rika, and I work as a researcher in Y Foundation.
And you are also in charge of this Erasmus Plus research that you are going to present in a bit. So we got a presentation. We're first talking about Finland. We've heard some examples about Finland has been praised in the previous speeches. So we will talk a little bit about Y Foundation. What is Y Foundation, the organization we work for? Then a little bit about statistics, and then how we have managed to get the numbers down in Finland. But then we also talk about what has worked, but equally I think it's very important to talk about challenges that we are still facing, especially in the current political climate that we have in Finland. Okay, so this is Y Foundation. The vision we have is that there should be a home for all. So we have different kind of housing. It's housing for special groups. Then we also have got a big stock of affordable rental housing. We are the 4th largest landlord in Finland, but we are also the largest nationwide non-profit landlord in the country. So in addition to that, we do a lot of advocacy work to combat homelessness. So we do a lot of work against homelessness. I will talk about that in a minute. So these are the key objectives that we work for. The number 3 is, of course, the most critical today, which is eliminating homelessness in Finland, but also reducing it internationally. But equally, I think, especially the number 1 is very much connected to that. So we want our residents to have good welfare socially and also economically. So Y Foundation, which was mentioned by Nicholas Please earlier, was founded almost 40 years ago. This was the time when we had 20,000 homeless people in Finland. 95% of those people were people living alone or single people. So there was a pressure from bigger cities to do something about it. And that's when our foundation started. It was founded by the biggest cities in Finland, trade unions, different institutions and associations. So we started with very, very few apartments. But this is now the current situation. So we have got about 19,000 apartments, almost in 60 locations across Finland. So we got these, what we call Y homes. These are people with special needs. These include people who are homeless, at risk of becoming homeless, people with learning difficulties, elderly, and so on. Then we also got these rental flats. We call them M2 homes, and they have to follow these ARA conditions, we call them. So you have to have low income and need for housing to be qualified for that kind of housing. But then, of course, you all probably already wondered, we always have to talk about money. So how do we finance all this? We are, as I said, we are a non-profit organization. But the state has played a big part in building especially building the rental houses. So we get interest subsidies from the state. Then we get loans from the bank. But of course, we have some rental income, especially with that number of housing we have at the moment. So that is financing the building of the new housing. But then we also buy apartments from free market. The scattered site housing was mentioned here before. So again, we get loans from the banks with low interest, and then grants from STEA, which is basically the lottery money. STEA also funds quite a few projects that we are running in Y Foundation, and many NGOs run at the moment. So that was Y Foundation, but this is now the map, what the situation is in Europe. We all know that there are about 900,000 people sleeping rough in Europe in any given night. The situation in Finland is a lot better. When you walk in Helsinki, you don't really see any rough sleepers there. We were for a long time the only EU country where the numbers were going down, and now we are the only EU country with the long-term, where the long-term homelessness is going down. But I have to say that this map was getting very boring to present, so we have got some good examples there marked with a little green star. So there is positive signs especially in the Nordic countries, but elsewhere as well. But I hope in a couple of years this map will look a lot greener, so we would be very happy to see that. And this is I think the chart that Nicholas Please was referring earlier. So in 1987 we had over 18,000 homeless people, and now we are, I think, well, we got the numbers coming up, but it's slightly over 3,000. So every year ARA, the Housing Finance and Development Center, asks the municipalities, all municipalities in Finland, to report back how many homeless people they have in their services. But you need to remember that this only includes people who are using the services. So people who don't have any official status, so-called paperless people, are not included in these numbers. So what I would like you to take away from this slide is not really the absolute numbers, but the trend, that because it's been measured like this since '87, at least we know that the trend is on a decline. So this was the situation. As I said, we had 20,000 homeless people in '85, and now, almost 40 years later, we are in almost 3,500 at the moment. So there are two messages I would like you to take away from this slide. The first one, of course, is that it can be done. But the second message is that there is no quick fix. So this is the picture of work, very persistent work of almost 40 years. So this is just tells you a little bit about about the characteristics. So about a quarter, or slightly less than a quarter, are long-term homeless, people who've been homeless for a year, or quite a few, numerous times in the last 3 years. So these are often people who have got some multiple challenges in their lives. About 60 or 70% of our homeless people, or people experiencing homelessness, they stay with friends and family, so they are included in these statistics. Families, so this number has gone down even more. But you need to remember that when we talk about families, the way we analyze these, that this also includes couples. So if it's a family with children, it's the law that the Child Protection Agency has to act very quickly. So they have to organize accommodation for families very, very quickly. So you don't see really homeless children. Well, you don't really see homeless people, but in the streets. But there's no way you would see anybody with a child. And then moving on, we talked about, or we heard about how important it is to have the political will. I think this has been the key factor in Finland. We are currently on our 5th national program. The two very first ones focused very heavily on long-term homelessness, and this is when Housing First, how we understand it in Finland, was launched. The government was investing money on renovating existing shelters into supported housing units, and then people with lived experience, they started to play even a bigger part. But there was a stick and carrot. So the government was also investing money on employing new members of staff, but at the same time they were asking organizations to follow the Housing First principle. In order to, for example, City of Helsinki to buy services from an NGO, there was a condition that they would apply Housing First in their services. After the first two programs, we had an international review done. We wanted to see whether we are on the right track, and Nicholas Please was leading the international group of researchers. And we got very good feedback that this is going very well in terms of reducing long-term homelessness. But the other thing what they mentioned, that you are sorting this end of the problem, but constantly there are new people entering homelessness. So you need to do something about prevention. So that's why the third program focused very much on prevention. We had lots of projects looking into this topic. The fourth one gave more responsibility to municipalities. There are very good practices come out from that program, but personally I think that the not having this kind of national leadership, we lost some kind of synergy between municipalities. People were doing them in the work in silos and not sharing the work as it maybe could have been shared. And then currently a new program was launched again on long-term homelessness, so kind of going the full circle, but understandably this is a very vulnerable group of homeless. But what we have done is we have been reminding this steering group of the program that you cannot repeat what was repeated earlier, that you kind of don't invest in prevention. So we have to have the prevention piece there at the same time when we talk about long-term homelessness. So we do it slightly different. The Housing First in Finland was born independently to the US model. We follow the principles what Nicholas Please was listing earlier, but these are the kind of cornerstones, if you like, of how we work. So we have got different housing options. Scattered is still the majority. I think it's about 70% of the housing. But what we have learned that there is a group of people who would find it very difficult to cope in scattered site housing, even with very intensive support. So we have got an option of supported housing units. We'll got some pictures about that in a minute. The other thing Nicholas was mentioning is this tailor-made support. So always, there's no ready-made team when somebody comes to the service, but we first have to see what the needs are, and then we put support together around those needs. Again, it's been mentioned, the key thing is the amount of affordable housing. Our former CEO used to say that you can't have housing first without housing first. So we have to, we can't, yeah, I think the message is in those sentences. And then prevention of homelessness, I think we got this called housing advice. It's many NGOs and municipalities are providing this service, which is there to catch you before things get serious. So even with any slight worries you may have, and so they can kind of tackle those issues early. And also these are professionals who can recognize the risks of homelessness. The other thing is what we have, especially in the supported housing units, is these low threshold work activities. This is, we all want something meaningful to do in our days, so people can participate if they want, how much they want, and then of course they are paid for that work. And finally, we have got this normality principle, which means that when you are given an apartment, you always have a rental lease, which is based on the law. It's exactly the same type of lease that you or I would sign if I was renting an apartment. So it kind of states the obligations and rights not only of the tenant but also the landlord. And then also the people who have been homeless, who get Housing First apartment, they are using the same services as we would use, and they claim they're entitled to all the same benefits, housing benefit, income benefit, pensions, whatever you were entitled to. So that's part of the Housing First in Finland. So these are just to kind of like summarize how we see this thing. So instead of managing homelessness, looking for something temporary, something short-term, we have moved to more long-term solutions, permanent solutions, which then results in ending homelessness. This is just the summary what we have. We've got some photos coming up. So, as I said, majority is in scattered housing. We got flats in supported housing units. These are buildings where sometimes there's support available if you need it 24/7. So there is a communal area where there is some members of staff. And then we got a hybrid, which means a scattered site housing quite close by to a supported housing unit. But if you need any support, you know that it is there, not far away from you. Okay, so this is a picture of a shelter that was in a very bad condition, in a very nice location in the metropolitan area, not far from Helsinki. Unfortunately, this couldn't be renovated. There was rot, and it just didn't make any sense to renovate that. But these were this is a building where many people were sharing a room. And this is now the new unit. So this was built 10 years ago. It's got 33 apartments, places for 35 people. So 2 apartments are for couples. So Y Foundation owns this building. Then City of Espoo chooses the tenants, but then it's the Salvation Army who is the service provider. So their members of staff are there 24/7. They got a communal area there. There is a gym there. They cook together. If you like, all this is optional. They do gardening. They do work in the environment, and they have got these communal meetings. So if I wanted to take some of you to go and visit, I couldn't just call the manager that can become. It's the communal meeting who makes the decision that do we want visitors. So everybody has got their front door, name on the door, or key to the door. So it's and rental contract, of course. So it's very independent life that you can have, but at the same time you have got that community there for you if you wish. And this is just a picture from inside. So it's got a little kitchen, a studio flat, and you got your own bathroom. And then we got this fairly new development we built not far from Helsinki. We got the supported housing unit there. There is a day center where local people can come for a cup of coffee. There are some events and activities, or they can come and read the paper. But then we have got these M2 rental apartments nearby. And then, of course, the scattered site housing. This is the hybrid model. So if you wanted to live, you feel that you're ready to live in scattered site housing, but you got some insecurities, you got support available in that, from that supported housing unit. So this has already been mentioned many times, the importance of affordable social housing. And this is an example in one very nice area in Helsinki, not far from the center. This area used to, because it's by the sea, it used to have loads of old shipping containers, and now it's a very attractive area to live. So the dark green ones are owner-occupied housing, and then the purple ones there are this affordable social housing. So the mix is very important. And also this is the target of the city planning in Finland, that in any newly built areas we should have at least 25% of social housing. And this is a good example of the mix. There is owner-occupied housing, but the one in the middle in yellow, that kind of stands out, but it's an apartment owned by Y Foundation. But the rest of them are owner-occupied housing. Preventing homelessness, we already talked about the housing advice. The housing advice, housing advisors, how they are able to help tenants with big or very often very small problems, and how they save money by preventing evictions. And then if you talk a little bit about the critical elements of ending homelessness, so if you think about society, again, I keep going on about this, but this is very crucial element, a number of affordable social housing. In Finland, the general housing benefit plays an important role. But then the method of implementation, I think, is equally important. So homelessness is not an issue that any actor or stakeholder alone can solve. So you need the wide partnerships. In Finland, it has been the government, national government, local governments like the cities and municipalities. But then NGOs like ARLs here have played a critical role, and not, of course, forgetting people with lived experience. And then when the very first program, the national program we showed you earlier, when that was introduced, it was very clear that we can't have these sentences in the plans that we want to reduce homelessness or something. We need to have a numbers, how many apartments, for example, by when do we need to have, so how many new professionals are hired. So we have to have very concrete quantitative goals to make the journey more determined. And then also this kind of short time span, that we can't say that we want to halve homelessness by 2050 or something like that. So the factor is that people who are homeless, they simply can't wait that long. So we have to have shorter time span from our decisions to executions. And then, of course, what it means on the individual level, there are probably many more critical elements there, but that the Housing First is a mainstream policy. You don't need to prove that you are housing ready. So we don't really do this staircase model anymore. We aim to have the permanent housing solutions, not that you stay somewhere for 2 months and people are checking whether you can cope and then you have to move again. You can't build a home in a situation like that. And then we know that one model doesn't fit everyone, so that's why we got these different housing solutions. Gathered site works for majority of people, but in some cases the support can't be intensive enough, and we know that there are issues with loneliness and integration as well. So what has worked? We have got permanent homes for over 6,000 people in Finland, homeless people. And then this kind of systemic change, what Nicholas Please was talking about. So instead of providing something short-term solutions and non-permanent solutions like shelters and hostels, we now have the policy, national policy of housing first. And then the example I showed you, the small housing unit, we know from experience that they work the best. We got bigger units as well. They all have got their pros and cons, but by far the smaller units, if you want to build a community, are the best option. Also the housing advisors, that has worked very well. We have got an increasing social housing supply, or at least we have had it in the past few years. People with lived experience are now involved in planning. They are there, whether we have meetings in the ministry or municipalities or very, very hands-on meeting, they are also always presented there. And one thing that I'm very proud of is this culture of collaboration in Finland. So the issue of homelessness, I think you can almost say that it's got this kind of co-ownership, that we know that none of us can do it individually. So it needs to have the role of the municipalities, but then the role of NGOs is very important. And then development network is coordinated by Y Foundation, but it's got, I think, 10 other organizations involved in that as well. So it's constant training, constant advocacy to people, not only people and frontline workers, which is very important, but also for people in other sectors, health and social sector and landlords and so on. So that's one of the key things behind our success. So we still have got work to do, and by no means Finland is a paradise when it comes to work against homelessness. Attitudes, there are still people who are missing the old times when they had more power and people had to, well, basically the staircase model. So we need to always keep training people. We always need to go back to the basic of what is actually housing first, this kind of the rights of the people, the tailor-made support, all this kind of stuff. And then we know that now we got 3,500 people left, but these also are people who need more support. We don't have enough resources on support at the moment, which is, there's one example there. There's not enough rehab places for truck users. And then the social and health services, despite all this training and working together and co-ownership, they still very much work in silos. So we still need to work on those. And then Not in My Backyard was mentioned here. That also exists in Finland, even with the small units we want to build. It's still there, unfortunately. And especially in the metropolitan area, we need more small, affordable housing. So before I give the floor to Riikka, these are just some books that you can download. The first one is basically the story of Housing First. It talks about the shelter conversions. And then the second one is about researchers imagining homelessness in 2030. Nicholas Please is one of the writers there. And then the third one is basically the story of Y Foundation, how we were born and how we work. And then I think we can move on to the research.
Yes, thank you, Saija. Just a couple of words of this research project that was already mentioned in the beginning. This is a EU-funded Erasmus Plus funded program where we are looking at the different ways in which Housing First policies are applied in Europe. And we have 4 countries involved in this project: Finland, Germany, Ireland, and Spain. And I think in Finland we are looking at the entire country, maybe also in Ireland. But in Germany and Spain, we are concentrating on Berlin and Catalonia area. So, in the below you can see our partners. There is Sofia Housing, who is leading this project in Ireland. Y Foundation, we are leading the research part of this project. This is a development project, not only research project. We have Housing First Berlin coming soon also here to present their work. And of course, ARRELS here in Catalonia. And as it was said in the beginning, that ARRELS is starting to conduct interviews in this area and maybe also in other parts of Spain. And of course, we hope active participation from different organizations to give their views on what they are doing in the field of Housing First. But this is our starting points of the project, or the research part of the project. There is a lack in understanding the local context, applications and barriers of Housing First in Europe. And I think that Nicholas Please explained this very well, that what are these adaptations of Housing First and why do we need them? That we cannot, this is not a one-size-fits-all policy. We cannot introduce something that has been developed in New York in 1992 to Europe as it is. We have to have some room for applications due to different service context, due to different budgets, and as Nicholas Please was explaining very well. So that is one of the starting points. Why do we need to look at these adaptations? And then the second important goal is that we need to ensure that these goals which were made in 2022 in Lisbon Declaration, that these goals are achieved. And for this purpose, we need trained staff. And this is very important aspect of this project, that we are gathering all this data to know what is working. And with the help of this information, we can train our staff in different European countries. So these are the 2 questions we are looking at: how Housing First has been adapted in different countries and partner organizations, and what are the staff training needs in Housing First. And here are the objectives: sharing of best practices and what works. Of course, improved outcomes for Housing First, service users or tenants. Also improved working conditions for staff. We need in order to this field to be kind of attractive for people to come to work, we need to have good working conditions. And then, as I mentioned already, the support for this Lisbon Declaration and the goals to end homelessness in Europe by 2030. So about the research, we are in Y Foundation, we are responsible for this research. This will continue. This project is a 3-year project, and the research has been part of the project since the beginning, but we have started the actual data gathering this year. And we have the 4 partners doing their share of the research. We are doing interviews in each of the partner countries, and every partner has been allocated some money for this. So this is the data that we are gathering. Interviews with organizations who have adapted Housing First or participated in the implementation of the policies in some way. And we are, our goal is to do around 50 interviews, which means around 12, 13 interviews per country. And this is something that RLS is now starting to do, and recruiting people also from Catalonia and Spain. Then we have focus groups interviews with partner organizations, service users, and peer workers. And we are going to do altogether 8 interviews, 2 in each countries. And this is something that me and Saya are doing. We have interviews here in Barcelona on Friday. We did focus groups interviews in Dublin in February, last November in Berlin, and then we will have focus groups in Helsinki in May. Then we are collecting case studies from each country, describing best practices in Housing First. And the purpose is to share these best practices throughout Europe, so we can learn from each other. And then also, finally, a survey, around 100. We are looking for around 100 responses to this survey. And this is, how do you say, we will deliver this survey in other European countries as well, not only the partner countries of this project. So unfortunately, we are still gathering the data, so we don't have results yet. These are some kind of insights, what we have gained from the interviews. For example, from the focus groups interviews, but also from the individual interviews. So one of the kind of the topics that has been discussed is how to scale up Housing First, how to make it a more kind of a mainstream, not only isolated projects here and there, but how to make it a mainstream policy. And this is, I think that also this Nicholas Please explained very well, that it is, in order for Housing First to succeed, it should be a mainstream policy, not just projects here and there. And this is something that the partner organizations and countries are struggling with, or kind of discussing. And maybe also related to these adaptations, how to kind of fit Housing First into these existing service systems and structures, and also legislation. This may be easy, but sometimes there may be some, not all people are keen on having change in their work environment or in the ways they work. So it might be difficult to introduce new ways of doing things. And this relates, this third point relates to this as well. So how to get people to work differently, break away from the traditional ways of working. And this is, like Saya explained, this is also something that we still have in Finland. People, you know, wish for the good old days when we could, like Nicholas Please was saying, that Housing First is about working with people, not doing something to them. So this is kind of a mindset that is not that easy to always to learn. And With respect to special groups, there has been people have been mentioning in the interviews that we need more support for young people, maybe some tailored services and housing options for young people, and also people with mental health difficulties and especially drug problems. And the role of peer work, this is something that is still kind of in process in many countries, that there isn't that many peers working in this area yet, so this is something that needs to be improved. But yes, that was the final slide, and thank you.